about Bihar, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh and Orissa, making sure that they will become the engines of growth for the new Amritkal India that we are trying to use as a bridge towards leading to Vikasit Bharat 2047. And Eastern India, I've missed out on West Bengal, please add it, Bihar, Jharkhand, Orissa, Chhattisgarh and West Bengal. Next generation reforms will be carried on, building consensus with states and stakeholders for reform, perform, transform.
And India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi today hailed the budget presented on Union Interim Budget 24-25. India's Prime Minister said this budget has the reflection of young aspirations of a young India.
ये बजट विकसित भारत के 4 स्तंभ युवा, गरीब, महिला और किसान सभी को एम्पावर करेगा। निर्मला जी का ये बजट देश के भविष्य के निर्माण का बजट है। इस बजट में 2047 के विकसित भारत की नींव को मजबूत करने की गारंटी है।
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi today hailed the budget as not merely an interim budget, but an inclusive and innovative one. Prime Minister asserted that this budget carries the confidence of continuity. He said that the income tax remission scheme will benefit the middle class.
इनकम टैक्स रेमिशन स्कीम की घोषणा की गई है। उससे मध्यम वर्ग के करीब 1 करोड़ लोगों को बड़ी राहत मिलेगी। पिछली सरकारों ने सामान्य मानवी के सिर पर दशकों से ये बहुत बड़ी तलवार लटका कर रखी थी। आज इस बजट में किसानों के लिए भी बहुत महत्वपूर्ण और बड़े निर्णय लिए गए। नैनो डीएपी का उपयोग हो, पशुओं के लिए नई योजना हो, पीएम मत्स्य संपदा योजना का विस्तार हो और आत्मनिर्भर ऑयल सीड अभियान हो। इससे किसानों की आय बढ़ेगी और खर्च कम होगा।
And reacting to the budget, CEO National Stock Exchange NSE of India, Ashish Chauhan, said India's tech-savvy youth will play a role in boosting the economy. Let's listen into this exclusive conversation with DD India's Shama Mishra.
We were expecting that the budget would be on the expected lines, not expecting any much, no major policy changes, and that is what has happened. This is also one of the shortest budget announcement that we've ever seen. To talk more on this, we have Ashish Chauhan with us. Sir, we did see that no major announcements happened over here, also because this is the election year. What do you see the major takeaways and overall reaction on this year's budget?
Overall, I think it's telling you that the government or the Honorable Finance Minister talked about last 10 years accounts and the achievements rather than last 1 year. But if you look at last 1 year itself, there have been tremendous achievements, and in some ways they got lost in the 10 years achievements related activities. They want to have growth, for which they are putting a lot of capex, and the capex has gone up from 10 lakh crore to above 11 lakh crore. It's 28-year high as a percentage of expenditure.
India aims to become a developed nation, and we are also moving towards Atmanirbharta. So by the time we become Atmanirbhar completely, my question is a tricky one. What do you expect from the actual budget that will happen now in July?
In 2047, as Honorable Prime Minister has given the vision of becoming a Viksit Bharat, that's what Honorable Finance Minister mentioned many times in her speech. And it is possible to become rich before we become old. See, each society gets old over a period. You have seen Japan getting old probably 20 years back. Europe has become old. China has suddenly become old because of one-child policy, and they have stuck in the middle income zone. Because of the way the technology is progressing, we have a chance over the next 23 to 25 years to become rich before we become old. And that's basically the hope of every right-thinking Indian. And it is achievable because we have a young population which is technology savvy. And if we are able to provide the infrastructure and environment for them to go out and service the entire world, whether by way of production of goods, but also providing services, that's where the PLI and other schemes, although it was not mentioned, we have been pretty much the services capital of the world. And there has been huge buoyancy in the services exports.
All right, thank you very much, sir.
In a few moments from now, we'll be taking you live to an exclusive interaction with Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman after she presented the interim budget for 24-25. In the budget, Finance Minister underlined the key priority areas of the government, the priority of the concerns of the poor, the farmers, the youth and women. And we now take you live to this exclusive interaction with Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman.
नमस्कार। संसद में अंतरिम बजट 2024-25 रखे जाने के तुरंत बाद देश के सबसे बड़े इंटरव्यू में आप सभी का स्वागत है। हमारे साथ बहुत ही खास मेहमान हैं देश की वित्त मंत्री श्रीमती निर्मला सीतारमण, जिन्होंने अथक परिश्रम किया, तपस्या की। 8 अक्टूबर से लगातार पूरी बजट टीम जो मंथन कर रही है, जिस तपस्या के साथ लगी हुई है, अब वो देश के सामने आ चुका है। और इस विशेष साक्षात्कार को मेरे साथ अंग्रेजी में आगे बढ़ाने के लिए मेरे सहयोगी श्री अनिल पद्मनाभन जी मेरे साथ हैं, जो कि वरिष्ठ आर्थिक पत्रकार हैं। मैं आपका भी स्वागत करता हूं इस प्रोग्राम में और मैं बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद वक्त निकालने के लिए। तो ये जो पूरी बजट निर्माण की प्रक्रिया है वो देश के निर्माण के साथ जुड़ी हुई है। आपने एक रोड मैप दिया विकसित भारत का। अगर मैं इसको समुद्र मंथन के साथ जोड़ूं और आपसे समझना चाहूं कि 10 अक्टूबर के बाद जो मंथन आपकी अगुवाई में आपकी टीम ने किया है, उसमें से कौन से अमृत काल के रत्न निकले हैं जो आज देश के सामने आपने रखे हैं? धन्यवाद।
पहले दूरदर्शन के लिए मेरा धन्यवाद कहना चाहती हूँ। इस मंथन सिर्फ 8 अक्टूबर से शुरू नहीं हुआ, उससे पहले से ही जब माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी देश को संबोधित करते हुए लाल किले से बात किए। ये अमृतकाल कर्तव्य काल भी हम मानते हैं और इस कर्तव्य काल में देश को विकसित भारत 2047 के ओर ले चलने के लिए हम क्या क्या कदम उठाना चाहिए, इसके ऊपर विचार बहुत विस्तृत रूप में हुआ है। इसीलिए आप देख रहे हैं कि भारत में 4 ही ऐसे कास्ट को मान्यता हम दे रहे हैं डेवलपमेंट के विषय में। अगर हम महिला, गरीब और किसान और युवा को उनके हर आकांक्षाएं पूरी करेंगे, वो आगे बढ़ेंगे और उनके आगे बढ़ने के कारण देश भी आगे बढ़ेगी। ये संक्षिप्त में इस बजट में हम कहना चाहते हैं। और उसके लिए कौन सा ऐसे प्रावधान करना है, वो भी करने के लिए तरह तरह के स्कीम्स का आयोजन हम बोल रहे हैं। कुछ पहले से कंटिन्यू कर रहे हैं, कुछ नया भी ले आ रहे हैं। मगर इन सब के लिए जो पिछले 3-4 साल से हम करते आ रहे हैं, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के ऊपर गवर्नमेंट कर छूटाना, प्राइवेट के लिए इंतज़ार ना करते हुए। मगर मैं हैप्पीली मैं कहना चाह रही हूँ कि प्राइवेट सेक्टर का भी इन्वेस्टमेंट अभी स्केलिंग अप के लेवल में हो रहा है। इसीलिए आप देख रहे हैं कि हम कंटिन्यू कर रहे हैं पब्लिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में खर्च, और हमारे देश जल्दी तरक्की करने के लिए इनोवेशन का प्रोत्साहन जो देना है वो भी हम देने के लिए अमाउंट भी डिक्लेयर कर दिया और उसका व्यवस्था भी हम रफली बोल दिए। जुलाई बजट में इसका विस्तृत रूप में हम कहेंगे।
Minister, congratulations, your 6th budget, and wanted to ask you that very clear strand in this is it has little or no populism whatsoever. So what is the thought that went behind taking such a bold move ahead of a general election?
I'm happy you asked this question. two things, and I'm very happy that the Honorable Prime Minister kept saying this, that our performance in the 10 years, which is what our Honorable President in her speech, the opening of the session for this calendar year, she said, 10 years of substantial systemic reforms, 10 years of taking the route of empowering people and not going by entitlement. And that is why when houses reach people, electricity reaches people, you also have money coming through direct benefit transfer, you financially empower them, you also make sure that opportunities are given to them. So the mantras that we used, whether it was Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, whether you're looking at making sure that actually you don't differentiate between beneficiary on any other score, except he deserves to get this, there is actual development reaching in the ground. There is no appeasement of sorts. There is no differentiating people. There is no denying people. Everybody gets everything that which that bracket of people should get. In that, no caste, no religion, no nothing is brought in. As a result, you find last 10 years, we've actually laid the foundation for people to now think in terms of meeting their aspirations. In this, the one particular aspect which I would think is a necessary corollary of all that we've done is the development of the East. And I want to make it clear here, I'm not combining East with Northeast. Northeast emphasis will continue. The way it has continued in the last 10 years, it will continue. But if 60% of all the aspirational districts in India are in the East, which is West Bengal, Bihar, Orissa, Jharkhand, we want to give, Chhattisgarh, we want to give maximum attention to make them not just come at par, but to become engines, the power of pulling the new India, aspirational India, which needs to reach Vikasit Bharat. So the vote on account budget was not seen as an instrument to tell people we can do this, we can do that, without having performed in the last 10 years. So we didn't want any populism coming here. We knew our track record will explain it. What yesterday Honorable Prime Minister nicely said, दिशा निर्देशक बातें आएगा, वही हम इसमें, we wanted to put that in. What are the directions? Who are the targeted audience? How will we meet the targets? And what are the targets? That's what we've given an indication.
Can I do a quick follow-up? This over the 10 years, you have given basics, which banking, electricity, cooking gas, and so on. So you effectively created 500 million plus new stakeholders in the Indian economy. How do you see this playing out for the economy and society going forward?
That will be the trigger point for any consumption in the future. Consumption not just of basic necessities, consumption not just of food products, consumption also of services, consumption of education, not as a corporate education, but seeking skills, seeking knowledge, seeking opportunity. And it is for that the Innovation Fund has been set up. And a large corpus is being given over the 5 years. And also making sure that some of the PM Shri schools will be endowed enough to give them opportunities. I spoke about how many young want to become doctors, how many such infrastructures lying with various other departments remaining unused. We want to get the synergy of all of them, establish more such institutions and give them the opportunity for it. So that is where that extra attention is being given.
वित्त मंत्री महोदय, आपने बजट के विजन में जो 2047 का विजन रखा है और वो जो विजन स्टेटमेंट आपके बजट एट ग्लांस के टॉप पे आता है, उसमें आपने कहा है कि समृद्ध भारत बनाने के लिए आप प्रकृति के संतुलन के साथ विकास को बढ़ावा देना चाहती हैं, पहला पॉइंट। दूसरा, आपने कहा कि आधारभूत संरचना आपके केंद्र में है नीतियों के, और तीसरा, सबको समान अवसर देना है। ये 3 फैक्टर्स हैं जो विकसित भारत के लिए, समृद्ध भारत के लिए आपने रखे हैं। लेकिन ये जो आंकड़ा है बुनियादी ढांचे का 11,11,111, तो इसके पीछे का दर्शन क्या है?
ये है कि पिछले 3-4 साल से पब्लिक एक्सपेंडिचर ऑन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, एसेट क्रिएशन, ये रास्ता हमने अपनाया। रिकवरी तेजी से हो कोविड से, रिकवरी ऐसे भी हो कि सभी वर्गों को साथ ले चलने वाले रिकवरी हो। और रिजर्व बैंक ऑफ इंडिया के एक रिपोर्ट से ये साबित हुआ, एंड दुनिया भर के इकोनॉमिस्ट भी इसमें अग्री करते हैं कि 1 रुपया अगर आप कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर में खर्च करते हो, उसका इफेक्ट कम से कम 1 रुपया 45-46 पैसा तक आपको मिलेगा शॉर्ट टर्म में। मीडियम टर्म का भी कुछ आंकड़ा है। अगर वो ना करते हुए आप रेवेन्यू में खर्च करोगे, 90 पैसा भी आपको मिलने में मुश्किल होगा। सो हम इसको स्टडी करने के बाद ही रिकवरी कोविड से जल्दी हो, सर्वस्पर्शी हो, इसलिए कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर के रूट अपनाए। और 2 साल में आपको देखने को मिल रहा है कि रिकवरी तेजी हुई और सस्टेनेबल भी हो रही है। इसीलिए उस रूट को ही हम अभी अपना करके सस्टेनेबल ग्रोथ अगले 3, 4, 5 साल के लिए होना है। इसीलिए कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर का महत्व है।
Minister, the one aspect of your budget is the fiscal math. You have not only stayed on the commitment on the fiscal glide, but you have improved on it. So the gross borrowings are obviously down. So which means RBI gets more room for maneuver in its monetary policy. So this plus the fact that over the last 10 years we have seen the RBI and Ministry of Finance are always on the same page, especially in the COVID phase. So can you just comment on this both?
I wouldn't say especially in the COVID phase, especially in the COVID phase and even afterwards. So that kind of a discussion, giving in and taking inputs with the RBI has been a continuous process. I do it even today. We continuously interact with one another and see where best we can bring in synergy. That is one thing. And second, the emphasis that we are laying on being fiscally prudent without affecting our schemes, without denying funds anywhere, and actually by avoidance of wastage. That is why we repeatedly talk about DBT and what actually it has given us saving. 2.56 or 2.6 lakh crores, 2.6 lakh crores would have gone waste, and no one would have known where it has gone, because it has gone to unborn children, it's gone to dead people, it's gone to people who don't exist in the village, and so on. So when you brought in technology and synchronized it with biometric validation, you were able to save money. So your prudence is not on just cutting expenditure, which we have not in large cases, but improving revenue and avoiding wastage. Taxpayers' money has been treated with the due respect that it deserves. And that is why today we have bettered on our fiscal deficit numbers this year and for the next year as well.
वित्त मंत्री महोदय, प्रधानमंत्री ने आपको और आपकी पूरी टीम को बहुत बधाइयाँ दी हैं और उन्होंने कहा है कि ये इंटरिम बजट ही नहीं है, ये इंक्लूसिव बजट भी है और इनोवेटिव बजट भी है, और साथ ही साथ कंसिस्टेंसी का कॉन्फिडेंस दिखाई देता है। लेकिन क्या ये कॉन्शियस डिसीजन है कि आप वुमेन एम्पावरमेंट पर फोकस कर रही हैं? क्योंकि G20 में हमने W20 पर फोकस किया, 26 जनवरी को हमने देखा कर्तव्य पथ पर महिलाएं केंद्र में रहीं, तो बजट का भी एक बड़ा फोकस, चाहे वो लखपति दीदी हो, पिछले साल आपने द्रोण दीदी बनाए, तो ये जो कॉन्शियस डिसीजन है महिला सशक्तिकरण का, क्या वो भी एक सशक्त हथियार है अपने भारत को विकसित भारत बनाने के?
बिल्कुल सशक्त हथियार है और बहुत दिन से वेट करने वाले वर्ग है। आप ये देख लीजिए, सिर्फ महिला बिल नहीं है, महिला बिल सर्टनली एक टॉप अचीवमेंट है, मगर 2014 से लेकर आज तक, और मैं ये भी कहूँ इससे पहले जब प्रधानमंत्री जी गुजरात में चीफ मिनिस्टर के नाते थे, तब भी महिला सशक्तिकरण के लिए काम किए। इधर आप देख लीजिए, डिफेंस में हर रैंक में आज महिला आ सकते हैं, परमानेंट कमीशन उनको मिल रही है, सैनिक स्कूल महिला के लिए हो रही है, और नेशनल डिफेंस एकेडमी और राष्ट्रीय मिलिट्री एकेडमी में भी महिला का रिक्रूटमेंट हो रही है, और हर क्षेत्र में महिला को प्रावधान मिल रही है। बहुत दिन से स्पेस इंडस्ट्री में महिला रहने के बावजूद भी उनका रिकग्निशन, उनका अप्रिसिएशन अभी जितना हो रही है उतना पहले मैंने तो सुना ही नहीं। इसरो में महिला, और उनका पेजेंट भी आपने देखा रिपब्लिक डे में। सो आपने सही बताया कि G20 में इसका बहुत ही अप्रिसिएशन हुआ। विमेन सेंट्रिक डेवलपमेंट सिर्फ नहीं, विमेन लेड डेवलपमेंट हो रही है, और दिल्ली डिक्लेरेशन में उसका एक वर्णन भी है। इसको प्रधानमंत्री जी बहुत सीरियसली लेते हैं, और उनके हर कार्यक्रम में आपको देखने को मिलेगा कि महिला प्रावधान देने के लिए जो भी कदम उठाना है वो उठाते हैं। और आने वाले दिन में भी ये लखपति दीदी हो, SHG ग्रुप के द्वारा ड्रोन टेक्नोलॉजी गांवों में महिला के हाथ में रहना एक पावरफुल स्टेटमेंट है। उसको ग्राउंड तक पहुंचाने में खुद स्वयं प्रधानमंत्री जी टाइम देते हैं, उसके लिए प्लान करते हैं, और उनको प्रोत्साहन भी देते हैं। जैसे स्पोर्ट्स में भी महिला के लिए बहुत ही प्रावधान अभी देना।
तो 1 करोड़ लखपति दीदी आपने कर लिया, अब 2 करोड़ का लक्ष्य बढ़ा के आपने 3 करोड़ कर लिया, तो फिर वो उसके लिए कुछ टाइमलाइन है मैम?
ये कार्यकाल 5 साल में।
5 साल।
Ma'am, I want to draw your attention to the growth trends in the budget. In the run-up to the budget, first RBI revised upwards pretty sharply. Then the CSO came out with an even higher estimate. My question is, are you looking at a new trend rate of growth for the Indian economy as opposed to the previous rates?
It will be too early for me to say that. However, I'm seeing that kind of a buoyancy. I'm seeing that kind of an energy coming out of every sector. Earlier, you would find that if manufacturing, you take it in one or the other, motorbikes or motor cars or passenger vehicles or whatever, if you had a trend coming, you couldn't say that of any other sector. And you couldn't certainly say that of services. But today, the way in which Indian economy is positioned, largely because of the drive that the Indian public is showing, you find every sector is revving to move fast. So it is safe for you to assume that it is not going to be confined to 1 or 2 sectors, but the pattern with which growth is happening is every segment is contributing to it. There is no one segment which is going to pull it down because of peculiar situations for them. Peculiar situations are being overcome because of the aspirations and the drive, the positivity which is there in the economy.
Can I just do a quick follow-up related question? The tax buoyancy, we have seen for the first time income tax collections are exceeding corporate tax collections. Second, when you had put out the earlier estimates, we saw that among the slabs there is a wealth effect which is operational. So is this exactly what you're talking about, that the growing aspirations are now manifesting even in income streams?
Partly yes. It is also in that newer areas of activity in which earlier people wouldn't want to tread are now opening up opportunities. Like for instance, space is a classic example. So India's space industry has been there for a long time, doing well for a long time. It's not as if they have succeeded only now, but the energy with which it is growing and the components which can be given by private participation, startups contributing to space sector, are giving them that multiplier which they wouldn't have had earlier. As a result, what is happening is that the contribution to the GDP is coming from areas which earlier did not even exist. And that is why your GDP's composition will have to be studied for what it is now, because newer and until now not recognized areas have suddenly spurred growth. And that is contributing. I took the example of space, I took the example of startups who are equally contributing and therefore giving us accumulation. That is applicable in many other sectors as well.
और यहीं से सवाल उठाते हैं मैम, जिसको आप सनराइज सेक्टर कह रही हैं, और अब वो सवाल जिस पर सभी लोगों की निगाहें हैं, जो आपने 1 लाख करोड़ रुपए के नए फंड की घोषणा की है, प्रावधान किया है। विकसित भारत बनने में भले ही हमें समय लगे, लेकिन कम से कम इस पॉइंट पे आपने आज इसी वक्त भारत को विकसित भारत बना दिया है। इसलिए क्योंकि जैसे विदेशों में बिल्कुल इंटरेस्ट फ्री लोन दिया जाता है R&D के लिए, आपने एक बहुत ही इनोवेशन दिखाया। इसके पीछे कैसे काम करेगा, कैसे इसका फायदा मिलेगा, और थोड़ा सा लोग जानना चाह रहे होंगे इसकी डिटेल्स में, थोड़ा बहुत आप शेयर करते हैं प्लीज।
हाँ, मगर अभी इतना डिटेल में मैं बता नहीं पाऊंगी क्योंकि उस डिपार्टमेंट उसमें बहुत ज़्यादा टाइम बीतेगी। बट लार्जली पैसा हम प्रोवाइड कर रहे हैं इंटरेस्ट फ्री, और उससे सस्ता कॉर्पस उनको मिल जाएगा। It can be some one of the government companies or some special purpose vehicle which will be created for it. उनको हमारी तरफ से लगातार अगले 2, 3, 4, 5 साल तक इसका पैसा मिलते जाएगा। मैंने अमाउंट घोषणा कर दी। उसके साथ वो प्राइवेट पार्टिसिपेशन भी मांगे। प्राइवेट पार्टिसिपेशन ना होने के बाद भी अगर नहीं होता, आइडेंटिफाइड प्रोजेक्ट्स के लिए प्राइवेट सेक्टर में भी उनके द्वारा असिस्टेंस मिलेगा। उधर भी इंटरेस्ट फ्री है क्या, वो नहीं, मैं बात नहीं बोल रहा। मगर सस्ते में जब पैसा मिलता है, उनको सस्ते में बिजनेस को प्रोत्साहन देने का भी मौका मिलता है।
और आपने टेक्नोलॉजी के साथ जोड़ा मैम।
हाँ जी,
जो लोग टेक्नोलॉजी के साथ जुड़े हैं उसके लिए फंड काम करेगा, इसलिए।
हाँ जी, इसीलिए मैं मानती हूँ वो एक मेजर स्टेप फॉरवर्ड है। अगले 5 साल के अंदर इसका जब उपयोग होएगा, बहुत सारे छोटे छोटे इनोवेशन, बड़े इनोवेशन, सब के लिए द मल्टीप्लायर फॉर डेवलपमेंट, कंट्रीब्यूशन टुवर्ड्स डेवलपमेंट, इन सब में डायरेक्टली प्रभाव पड़ेगा। और जब एक वस्तु इनोवेशन के कारण बेनिफिट मिलता है, वो पूरे सेक्टर का तुरंत, जैसे पेमेंट सिस्टम में भारत डिजिटल पेमेंट सिस्टम ले आने के बाद आप ताकत देखिए, छोटे छोटे गांव में से कितना पेमेंट्स हो रही है, रिसीट हो रही है। ये नहीं है कि उधर पैसा मिल रही है, मगर कुछ एक्टिविटी के लिए पेमेंट जा रही है।
और इसके लिए भी आपने इंसेंटिव दिया है शायद। हाँ, छोटे भीम ट्रांजैक्शंस को प्रमोट करने के लिए कुछ 1400-1500 करोड़ रुपए की व्यवस्था की जी।
लगातार वो 2 बार हो चुका है
जी।
I want to pick up from where you left off. You also identified DPI as a factor of production. If you combine it with all the basics that are being provided, the physical infrastructure, is India now looking to harvest its digital dividends?
Undoubtedly, yes. Because now India's stack as a whole, whether some people may want it or not, at least some bricks from it, some countries need it. We are willing to extend that help. Private players in this sector are also finding newer marketplace where they can go and sell it for, or make money out of it, or provide that technology for one or the other exchange of goods, or it can be for whatever terms and condition which a private person would want to do. So India created public infrastructure, made it available for private parties, made it available for small, medium fellows who all want to get onto that and benefit. So Indian economy got a traction. But those who contribute now, building on the public infrastructure, are also standing to benefit because they themselves are taking that produce, which is essentially a public infrastructure foundation, and building on it. That itself is becoming a commodity for transaction.
अनिल सर, ये मॉडल पूरी दुनिया में कहीं नहीं है, भारत की सौगात है। क्योंकि बाहर वेस्ट में तो लोग प्राइवेट कंपनीज प्रोडक्ट बनाती हैं लोगों के लिए, उसका इस्तेमाल करते हैं। हमने एक पब्लिक प्लेटफॉर्म दिया और उसमें प्राइवेट सेक्टर को लेकर आए थे, एक नया मॉडल।
और कॉमन मैन को तुरंत इससे ऊर्जा मिल गए, और वो दुनिया के मार्केट उनके कंप्यूटर के द्वारा एक्सेस कर रहा है आज।
मैम, मैं अब राज्यों को जो आपने इस पर हेल्प की है उस पर फोकस करना चाहता हूं। हम देख रहे हैं कि जो डेवोल्यूशन है 4 लाख करोड़ से ज़्यादा का है पिछले साल से, अगर हम कंपेयर करें। साथ ही साथ आपने आध्यात्मिक स्पिरिचुअल टूरिज्म है उसको फोकस करने के लिए कहा कि आप 75,000 करोड़ रुपए अलग से देंगी। फिर आप ग्रांट्स भी बढ़ा रही हैं, 15th कमीशन का गठन आपने कर दिया है। तो ये जो राज्यों पर आपका भरोसा है कि वो नए ग्रोथ इंजन, आपने कहा ईस्ट इंडिया को आप बनाना चाहती हैं, तो कैसे राज्यों को आप साथ लेकर के चलना चाहते हैं, और राज्य सरकारों के लिए आपका मैसेज क्या है?
राज्य सरकार ने इस विषय में अच्छा एंथुसियाज्म दिखाए। कौन सा? ये स्टेट के लिए हम कैपिटल जो दे रहे हैं 50 साल का इंटरव्यू, स्पेशल असिस्टेंट्स जो बोलते हैं, उसका अच्छा उपयोग स्टेट्स ने किया है। लार्जली मोस्ट स्टेट्स ने अच्छा उपयोग किया है। इसके बावजूद भी कि एक ही साल के अंदर उस अमाउंट को पूरे के पूरे उपयोग करना है फॉर क्रिएटिंग असेट, उसमें आगे आकर के बहुत स्टेट्स बहुत ही बेनिफिट पाए और उसमें आज भी इंटरेस्ट है, इसीलिए उसको हम इस साल भी एक्सटेंड किए। उससे मैं मानती हूँ जितना केंद्र डिपार्टमेंट के द्वारा हम इन्वेस्ट कर रहे हैं, उससे कम 30% स्टेट्स में भी हो रही है। आज स्टेट्स जल्दी उनके अपने लॉन्ग टर्म प्रोजेक्ट्स को कंप्लीट कर पा रहे हैं। उस एंथुसियाज्म को हमने बरकरार रखना चाहते हैं, इसीलिए इस बार भी उसमें एलोकेशन हुआ है।
Minister, I want to draw your attention to, in your speech, you talked of in the societal changes, setting up a high-part committee to look at population growth, fast population growth and demographic changes. What is the thought behind it and any timeline you had?
The thought behind it is we always speak, I've also said in a different context, there are 3 Ds about which we're talking: demography, democracy, and the diversity. All 3 of it are characteristically India's advantage. So now, when this advantage exists for us, are we able to long-term plan for it? Are we able to really leverage that advantage? What is the kind of consideration that we should have in our mind? How are we going to be able to next, at least in the Kartavya Kal, use that advantage for our benefit? So for this, a comprehensive understanding is required. We need to have some group taking all these considerations into their minds and sit and draft up something for the government, because it's not going to be in bits that we can attend to this, saying that it is an opportunity, we need to have some skills done here, some work done there, but it also is something on which long-term planning, which needs considered inputs. That's why we've come up.
Okay. Is it to put spotlight on the demographic dividend, the window for which will probably cease in another 20 years?
Yes, it is certainly aimed at that.
वित्त मंत्री महोदय, अगर आप इजाज़त दें तो मैं इसको जोड़ना चाहता हूं थोड़ा सा। 22 जनवरी की भगवान श्री राम की प्राण प्रतिष्ठा के साथ, उससे पहले प्रधानमंत्री ने 11 दिनों का उपवास किया, तपस्या की और देश को एक राह दिखाई। आपने सर्वस्पर्शी, सर्वसमावेशी जैसे शब्दों का प्रयोग किया। भले ही आपने इसे राम राज्य का बजट न कहा हो, लेकिन काउंटर्स जरूर दिखते हैं, वो पॉइंट्स जरूर दिखते हैं। आप सभी को समान अधिकार देना चाहती हैं, सबको एक साथ लेकर के चलना चाहती हैं। तो क्या हम ये मान सकते हैं कि ये जो केंद्र है पूरे बजट के प्रोसेस मेकिंग का, और कर्तव्य काल में लोगों के कर्तव्यों के लिए आपका क्या संदेश है? क्योंकि वो बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट है, सभी की भूमिका होगी विकसित भारत में अपनी तरफ से अपना योगदान देने की।
सही बात है, सभी का योगदान है, नहीं तो ये 2047 का मंजिल हम पहुंच नहीं पाएंगे। मगर पहुंच नहीं पाएंगे ऐसे छोड़ने का विषय नहीं है। भारत इस बार उस रास्ते पर सही चलना चाहिए, सबको ले चलना चाहिए। उसके लिए जितने भी कार्यक्रम हम करना है, उसके लिए हम कटिबद्ध है। ये सर्वव्यापी स्पर्शी बीजेपी का भी, पार्टी का एक आइडियोलॉजी में एक ये भी है कि बीजेपी में कार्यकर्ता सबको ये मालूम है कि पार्टी सर्वव्यापी होना चाहिए, सर्वस्पर्शी होना चाहिए, और जो भी कार्यक्रम हम सरकार के द्वारा इसीलिए कर रहे हैं वो सर्वांगीण विकास के लिए काम करना चाहिए। ये हमारे मंत्र है, मूल मंत्र है, उसके लिए हम ज़रूर काम करेंगे।
वित्त मंत्री जी बहुत धन्यवाद, और इतनी अच्छी हिंदी के लिए भी बहुत धन्यवाद, और आपने पहला साक्षात्कार दिया डीडी नेटवर्क को। और अनिल जी, मैं आपका भी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद करना चाहता हूं। तो फिलहाल इस खास साक्षात्कार, इस खास इंटरव्यू में सिर्फ इतना ही। आपको ले चलते हैं वापस स्टूडियोज, जहां पर हम बजट के तमाम काउंटर्स पर लगातार ये विशेष चर्चा आपके साथ कर रहे हैं और बजट को सरल भाषा में आप तक पहुँचाने का प्रयास कर रहे हैं। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
All right, you were watching an exclusive interview of Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, her first post-budget interview given to the Indian public broadcaster. Just to recap for the benefit of viewers joining in right now, the Minister spoke about how her ministry's priority was to give emphasis or lay emphasis on prudence over populism, especially in an election year. Women-led development was at the heart of the budget-making process. She referred to Prime Minister Modi's commitment to the 4 classes or categories of beneficiaries, starting with the poor, women, youths, and the farmer. She spoke about also at some length on the rationale and the thought behind the Interim Budget 2024. And she concluded by laying emphasis once again, reiterating that this budget, in her estimation, will lay the foundation for a developed India by the year 2047. All right, on that note, time for a very short break here on this special broadcast. News and updates continue on the other side. Keep watching DD India.
ग्रामीण अर्थव्यवस्था के संरक्षक एग्रीकल्चर इंश्योरेंस कंपनी ऑफ इंडिया
Voice of a rising aspirational world. Stories of challenges, struggles and accomplishment. A world battling conflict, hunger and poverty. Embracing growth, development, science and technology. A voice of progress, a voice of unity. Watch Voice of the Global South with me, Akshay Dongre, only on DD India.
ग्रामीण अर्थव्यवस्था के संरक्षक एग्रीकल्चर इंश्योरेंस कंपनी ऑफ इंडिया ग्रामीण अर्थव्यवस्था के संरक्षक एग्रीकल्चर इंश्योरेंस कंपनी ऑफ इंडिया ग्रामीण अर्थव्यवस्था के संरक्षक एग्रीकल्चर इंश्योरेंस कंपनी ऑफ इंडिया
In a world that never stops.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi hailed the budget. He said that it is a reflection of the aspirations of a young India.
ये बजट विकसित भारत के 4 स्तंभ युवा, गरीब, महिला और किसान सभी को एम्पावर करेगा। निर्मला जी का ये बजट देश के भविष्य के निर्माण का बजट है। इस बजट में 2047 के विकसित भारत की नींव को मजबूत करने की गारंटी है।
Prime Minister Modi said that the budget gives the confidence of continuity. He said the income tax remissions will benefit the middle class.
रेमिशन स्कीम की घोषणा की गई है, उससे मध्यम वर्ग के करीब 1 करोड़ लोगों को बड़ी राहत मिलेगी। पिछली सरकारों ने सामान्य मानवी के सिर पर दशकों से ये बहुत बड़ी तलवार लटका कर रखी थी। आज इस बजट में किसानों के लिए भी बहुत महत्वपूर्ण और बड़े निर्णय लिए गए हैं। नैनो डीएपी का उपयोग हो, पशुओं के लिए नई योजना हो, पीएम मत्स्य संपदा योजना का विस्तार हो और आत्मनिर्भर ऑयल सीड अभियान हो। इससे किसानों की आय बढ़ेगी और खर्च कम होगा।
K.V. Subramanian, the Executive Director of International Monetary Fund and a former Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India, called the budget judicious and visionary.
On tourism and on the 75,000 crore for states, interest-free loans, I think that is good news. So overall, that's basically how I would assess it. Judicious on the fiscal front, non-populist because it's more of the same, and visionary because many of the steps on innovation and on capex, etc.
Vinod Sharma, who heads the National Committee of Information Technology and Electronics at the Confederation of Indian Industry, or CII, said that announcements on solar rooftop and electric vehicle made him enthusiastic about India's future prospects. Take a listen.
We are on to a responsible yet inspiring, next 5 years. In terms, obviously, we were not expecting any changes in taxes. For our own industry in electronics, there was some tweaking on some rationalization of customs duty, but that was already announced yesterday. For my industry, I would say that what enthuses me, and I'm sure my members, is the announcements regarding rooftop solar, the announcements regarding electric vehicles, and what the improvements that we want to do in agricultural productivity.
All right, joining me are two very special guests from the Confederation of Indian Industry, or CII. Joining me are Mr. R. Dinesh and Mr. Sanjeev Puri. Mr. Dinesh is the president of the Confederation of Indian Industry. It is a trade association and advocacy group headquartered in New Delhi. And Mr. Puri is the chairperson of ITC Limited and president designate of the CII. Gentlemen, welcome to DD India News Hour. First off, can we have opening remarks for the two of you gentlemen, starting with you, Mr. Dinesh. What was the messaging contained in the budget document in your estimation?
Thank you. So if you really look at it, the budget has been focused on continuity, and especially the fact that the infrastructure spend has been increased and it has been maintained at 11% growth with covering about 11 lakh crores, as well as ensuring equitable growth, which covers various sectors and especially the rural economy, is something which is boding very well for the future. I think India today has been in a position of great opportunity, both because of the various actions taken within the country in terms of strengthening the infrastructure, both in the cost of doing business and increasing the competitiveness of India. And on top of that, you have India being the trusted partner for other geopolitical reasons as well. So we believe this budget sets the tone for strengthening that and gives a clear vision and direction for the future.
Indeed. Mr. Puri, coming to you now, did the budget tick all the right boxes for you? I ask you this because one would say that Minister Sitharaman chose prudence over populism, especially in an election year.
Thank you. Well, I would say that it's a budget that reflects continuity of vision and strategy with a lot of focus on execution and also in articulating the next steps in our journey to Viksit Bharat.
Right.
It is a budget that I would say really inspires growth. It's building a competitive India, and it's doing so in a fashion that is sustainable and inclusive. And I agree with some of the call-outs that my colleague Dinesh made. I would just like to add to it. I think, it's a budget that has looked at how the potential of all the sectors of the economy, agriculture, services, and manufacturing can be unlocked. There are many of very specific and important directions set there for strengthening competitiveness of each one of these sectors. And tourism in particular was the new area where there is a lot of thrust. So all in all, I think it's going to be a very, very impactful budget. I think there is a very important intervention of providing incentives for pursuing reform at the state level, because as you know, the next generation of reforms, and some those have been already put in place, require the execution at the last mile. And I think that's a good development. It's also tremendous to see the focus on research and development. Technology and R&D and IP can be strong foundation for the economy in future. So I think this whole idea of providing resources for that is also very welcome. So I would say, yes, it has ticked all the boxes.
All right, Mr. Dinesh, Mr. Puri, I'll come back to you momentarily. If I may take a moment here to also welcome Mr. Chandradij Banerjee, the Director General of the CII, for his opening remark as well. Mr. Banerjee, welcome to you. Your thoughts on the key takeaways from the budget document. What did you make of the theme and substance contained in that document as well?
Thank you very much. And I think, the earlier two panelists, both Mr. Dinesh and Mr. Puri, alluded to some of the points. I'd really like to state this budget, interim budget, as one which is an inclusive budget. Okay. One we are seeing a far-reaching last mile connect. Mm-hmm. That's very, very important. Infrastructure development and investment are some of the key hallmarks of the budget. I like the focus on green power. I also really would like to laud the entire focus that we saw in the budget on the women and youth. I think these are very important areas, and women especially has been a center focus, if I can say, of the government, and seeing it being carried through in the budget is of great value. And of course, lastly, I just wanted to say the way it was defined, that besides delivering on high growth, the government's being equally focused on a more comprehensive GDP when it talked about governance, development, and performance. And I think that was very key, besides the fiscal prudence, the discipline, all of that, which was also talked about.
All right, now that we have the opening remarks or comments in from all three of my guests, let me now dive into the specifics, the substantive portion of the budget and its implications going forward. Starting with you, Mr. Dinesh, more than 11.1% increase on capex. Timely, you think, with a focus on infrastructure and job creation?
Yeah, so I think if you look at first, the reason why India has grown in the past 3 years has been this focus on the infrastructure and making sure the development is completely supported. This actually has made it possible for ease of doing business and also for the cost of doing business. So I think that's not just welcome, but it's absolutely continuing the trajectory of supporting the infrastructure. Let us also not forget, on top of this, we have the investment being made on through the PM Gati Shakti scheme on the railway connectivity, which also will reduce logistics costs and make India further more competitive. So these two coming together are, I would call it, the perfect continuation of the focus on making India more competitive and more interesting for manufacturing as a base to be created.
All right. Mr. Puri, coming to you now, you refer to the $12 billion corpus for R&D and innovation. Do you think that's a good initiative, propelling India into the big league of countries in the Indo-Pacific, Europe, and even North America?
Absolutely. I think certainly the R&D component of as a percent of GDP certainly needs to go up for India to develop its own IP, its own value chains, to be at the cutting edge of technology. We've already started to take some very interesting initiatives on bringing semiconductors into India. Of course, it normally starts with the assembly stage, but then we have to move up the value chain also. We are creating a large ecosystem for electronics also. And in future, with our own IP and technology, we can actually be creating our own new, fresh value chains. and R&D and innovation is equally relevant for the agriculture sector, which faces the brunt of the climate emergency. There's a lot of work to be done as far as developing solutions that will make the sector even more resilient. There is some R&D that's already happened. There are some good practices already being disseminated by the government, but really to put it on a much more sounder foundation, much more robust foundation, because this extreme weather events will only multiply. I think innovation and R&D is vital to our future growth and development of the nation.
Mr. Banerjee, do you want to weigh in on the same issue, the $12 billion corpus for R&D and innovation? Also, is India on course to bring down the fiscal deficit from 5.1 as projected in 2024 down to 4.5%, which is the target?
So no, on the a crore of rupees.
Sure.
This corpus that we have talked about, 1 lakh crore corpus, which is a 50-year interest-free loan. This will really provide long-term financing and refinancing with long tenors and very low interest rates. And this, I believe, will really help the private sector catch up in terms of this R&D spend. The private sector's R&D spend vis-a-vis the India's GDP is much lower than what the government has been spending. And I think the private sectors needs to scale up research and innovation as a part of its GDP very significantly. And this would be a great step towards that. And it's very much required when we talk about Make in India, when we talk about manufacturing in India. But unless we are designing in India, we are doing our R&D from the private sector deeply, we would be a laggard. So this is a great step in this direction. And this entire work on this deep, this new scheme that was said that would be launched to strengthen the deep tech technologies for defense purposes. That itself also was a very, very important step in a direction. But you also talked to me about fiscal management, and I think this glide path that we have talked about, that we saw of reducing the fiscal deficit to 4.5%. This was something which really inspires a phenomenal global confidence into India. The investor confidence really becomes very strong, and the adherence to this strict fiscal management, I strongly believe, and CIA has been saying, will improve our macroeconomic stability. It will reduce our debt burden. It will reduce our interest payment, improve our intergeneration equity, which is extremely important, and make money available for developmental expenditure. So I think capex to support states being continued is a very, very important signal too. So I think going forward, we can see that this is which will make it much more stronger for a private sector to participate much deeply into the economy.
Mr. Dinesh, may I take that same question to you as well? How do you look at the fiscal discipline and management in terms of the fiscal deficit projection at 5.1%, and are we on course to reducing it going forward as well?
Yes, undoubtedly so. In fact, if I look at what has happened in the rest of the world and compare India, I think this is a very big achievement. And we have to laud the Finance Minister not just for maintaining this fiscal deficit, but making sure that the continued focus on investment in infrastructure as well as the equitable growth focus has not been lost. So that's one side of it. The second side of it is the cost of, if you look at India's sovereign rating and the ability to borrow, I think the government reducing its borrowings will give a lot of headroom available for corporates to be able to access debt at a very reasonable cost, which also makes it possible for further investment by the private sector players to enhance what the government is doing on the infrastructure side. So if I combine these two, I think India has got a very strong position to take advantage of whatever has happened in the past and also get the cost of capital down and influence the growth from an approach perspective. Therefore, the focus on this fiscal discipline, even in a year of an election, consolidating the strength of India from an approach of, I would call it manufacturing and equitable growth is to be complemented.
Mr. Puri, I want to go back to something that you mentioned in your opening remarks or intervention there. You spoke about strategy in terms of continuity, inclusivity, innovation. In that context, the minister referred to in a document, in a speech on a strategy for 2047 that will foster growth, inclusive development, more productivity, more opportunities, and fulfill the aspirations of a young India. Your thoughts on the strategy in particular for 2047?
So, I think the foundation for, a developed nation or Viksit Bharat the pillars are very clearly being articulated and being put in place. The focus of this budget, as also prior budgets, has been on investing behind productive capacity, on creating productive capacity, of empowering every constituent of the economy. So we have the physical and digital infrastructure that makes the economy competitive, opens up new avenues. We have the focus on the agri sector, a very important sector because a lot of livelihood is emanating from the agri sector. It's also a sector that can reduce our import dependence, a sector that's important for food security, and enormous potential also over time to also be a powerhouse of exports. There is equally a focus on services. India is, well known globally as far as the IT services, technology-led services is concerned. Now we're seeing another element adding to that, which is tourism. And India has enormous potential in tourism, whether it's spiritual tourism or adventure-related or beach tourism, heritage tourism. Even India has a lot of diversity in culture and cuisine that itself can be showcased for tourism. So really it is touched on all the key elements of the economy and the building blocks to make them competitive. There's a lot of focus on skilling, on education. There are many educational institutions that have come in. There is a focus on healthcare. So it's a holistic budget that is kind of putting in place all the pillars and strengthening them to move towards a developed nation. There is this piece that we earlier spoke about, the focus on R&D innovation. There is focus on the next set of reforms which will involve the states to a greater degree. I think these are all really the elements that are being put together for a competitive India, for a growth-oriented budget, but growth that is green and inclusive.
Mr. Banerjee, along with her strategy for 2047, the minister also referred to what she called next-gen reforms in the context of Prime Minister Modi's emphasis on reform, perform and transform. In that context, she also spoke about how she and the government would want to focus on forging a consensus with all stakeholders concerned. What should one make of it? Are you sanguine or confident that bolder reforms are on the anvil?
I would, yes, imagine so, because, when we talk about Viksit Bharat, we need stronger reforms carried through. Which this government has done. Lots have happened, when we have already spoken at your session today. But there is a lot more to be done, and at a great speed. So, number one, if you really look at what the foundations of the budget has laid down, one area which was talking about a net zero or 2070, we are looking at a much green India. India's leadership, the leadership that India has taken from the global south on sustainability is a big story today, and it's very important story today, and I see that being taken forward. And there is, of course, which leads to a lot of consultation, which you mentioned, a lot of discussions across ministries, across state governments, which would be very important as we go along for a greener path. There is a lot of reforms that also needs to be done at the state level. If you see, when we have seen states participating. We need the agri reforms to take place. We need the labor reforms to take place. There are so many reforms which really lie also at the state level. So I think this is something where we would like to see a lot of consensus developing in terms of the next level, next generation of reforms, which will take India ahead and take it very strongly. The other point which I also really wanted to mention, there will be a lot of challenges which are coming in. These are challenges not peculiar to India. When we talk about, say, areas like artificial intelligence, so to say, so we would there also require a lot more consensus across sectors, across different ministries, and there also we probably require national AI policy, etc., to come up. We would need to see a strong and collaboration also between the private sector, the industry, and the government when we talk about geoeconomics, and really look at how we can be secure economically and watch the space of geoeconomics development. So all of this will require, and I see this interim budget setting a stage for us to go for those areas in the near future. You talked about taxes, and I'll end with that. Say, for instance, in GST, what a phenomenal reforms we have seen, not just GST, but the tax reforms, the ease of taxation. So people really want more simplification rather than now duties coming down. That's been done. So we need more. So simplification is one huge feedback that we are receiving from companies and individuals of something which has been done so very well. So in GST, we would like to see our convergence to those three rates. So those are the levels of reforms that India will look forward to.
Right, gentlemen, I am nearing the end of my time. So one last question to the three of you, starting with you, Mr. Dinesh. How would the industry be reacting as we speak to the Finance Minister's remarks on electric vehicles, rooftop solar, and so on?
Very good moves. In fact, it gives a very clear direction, not just from how the sector will be supported in terms of e-vehicles. But equally important is the involvement of the creation of the charging infrastructure and bringing in the vendors to support it, and the payment securitization for e-buses, because that's been an ask of industry over a period of time. On the renewable energy, I think, as we all know, if you are going to get really green, it has to be with the significant thrust which this government has given, and in fact we have exceeded our requirements to be met already. So this is now reaching out to the common man, if I can say so, by getting the solar rooftops being done across, and also supporting them by giving the benefit to them on free electricity. So these are all, I would call it, not just path-breaking initiatives, but they lay the ground for the future of India and the future of a sustainable growth for all of us.
Mr. Puri, since you were the one who particularly referred to the potential of tourism in the context of Minister's remarks on spiritual tourism and Lakshadweep in particular, may I ask you for your last thoughts on how the industry could best tap into the opportunities that this presents itself for them going forward?
To develop tourism, the Honorable Finance Minister has clearly articulated the path, which involves some, providing some resources to the states to develop certain destinations. On one hand, I think the improved connectivity provides the access, but then we do need to develop a set of facilities, a set of interesting activities for tourists to come there. We need to develop, the hospitality assets for accommodation and for engaging, tourists there. It will give a lot of opportunity for investments in hotels, in other tourism assets. It will provide a lot of opportunity to micro and small enterprises, because the whole ecosystem of services will need to be put in place. And it is also a sector that has enormous economic multipliers. It's a very large multiplier on employment. I think Faith has also given out some data that as much as 50 million jobs could be created in this sector over a period of time. So it's a sector with immense amount of opportunity, and it's a sector where not only large corporates that may build hospitality or hotels, but also small, medium, micro enterprises will participate. It will also give a boost to the transportation industry, whether it's aviation or by road transport. So all in all, it will provide immense opportunity to many players of the economy, many business segments.
All right, Mr. Banerjee, you get the last word. How would you rate or characterize the budget on balance? 10 on 10?
I would think it's a very prudent budget. It's a very prudent budget. It's a very inclusive budget. And it's a budget which really gives a very clear roadmap of the government's thinking and us for being a Viksit Bharat and a $30 trillion economy in the next few years' time.
All right, on that optimistic note, may I thank all three of my guests, Mr. R. Dinesh, Mr. Sanjeev Puri, and Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee, for joining us and sharing your thoughts and insights with our viewers at home and abroad. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, you're watching a continuing coverage here on DD India of the Interim Budget 2024 of India. Time for a very short break. Keep watching DD India.
Are you popping pills like candy for every sniffle and cough? Is excessive use of antibiotics creating superbugs? And does this mean that antibiotics will no longer be effective? I connect the dots to get you the full picture. Watch Connecting the Dots every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India.
ग्रामीण अर्थव्यवस्था के संरक्षक एग्रीकल्चर इंश्योरेंस कंपनी ऑफ इंडिया।
Why is the world preparing for a second Trump presidency? I connect the dots to get you the full picture. Watch Connecting the Dots every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India.
ग्रामीण अर्थव्यवस्था के संरक्षक एग्रीकल्चर इंश्योरेंस कंपनी ऑफ इंडिया।
Welcome back. You're watching DD India. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Reacting to the budget, the CEO of the National Stock Exchange of India, Ashish Chauhan, says that India's tech-savvy youth will play a role in boosting the country's economy. He spoke to DD India's Shyama Mishra in Mumbai.
We were expecting that the budget would be on the expected lines, not expecting any much, no major policy changes, and that is what has happened. This is also one of the shortest budget announcements that we've ever seen. To talk more on this, we have Ashish Chauhan with us. Sir, we did see that no major announcements happened over here, also because this is the election year. What do you see the major takeaways and overall reaction on this year's budget?
Overall, I think it's telling you that the government or the Honorable Finance Minister talked about last 10 years accounts and the achievements rather than last 1 year. But if you look at last 1 year itself, there have been tremendous achievements, and in some ways they got lost in the 10 years achievements related activities. They want to have growth, for which they are putting a lot of capex, and the capex has gone up from 10 lakh crore to above 11 lakh crore. It's 28-year high as a percentage of expenditure.
India aims to become a developed nation, and we are also moving towards Atmanirbharta. So by the time we become Atmanirbhar completely, my question is a tricky one. What do you expect from the actual budget that will happen now in July?
In 2047, as Honorable Prime Minister has given the vision of becoming a Viksit Bharat, that's what Honorable Finance Minister mentioned many times in her speech. And it is possible to become rich before we become old. See, each society gets old over a period. You have seen Japan getting old probably 20 years back. Europe has become old. China has suddenly become old because of one-child policy, and they have stuck in the middle income zone. Because of the way the technology is progressing, we have a chance over the next 23 to 25 years to become rich before we become old. And that's basically the hope of every right-thinking Indian. And it is achievable because we have a young population which is technology savvy. And if we are able to provide the infrastructure and environment for them to go out and service the entire world, whether by way of production of goods, but also providing services. That's where the PLI and other schemes, although it was not mentioned, we have been pretty much the services capital of the world. And there has been huge buoyancy in the services exports.
All right, thank you very much, sir.
India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh congratulated Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman for presenting an encouraging budget. He said it will guide the country towards becoming a developed nation by the year 2047.
वित्त मंत्री श्रीमती निर्मला सीतारमण जी ने आज जो इंटरिम बजट पेश किया, ये फुल फ्लेज बजट नहीं है, इंटरिम बजट है। लेकिन इंटरिम बजट जो भी उन्होंने प्रस्तुत किया है वो बहुत ही इनकरेजिंग है, बहुत ही उत्साहवर्धक है और आगे के लिए भी और अधिक आशाएं बढ़ती हैं। और भारत की इकॉनमी की साइज जितनी इस समय है, इसमें पूरी तरह से मैं आश्वस्त हूं इस इंटरिम बजट के कारण ही, जो भी इंडिकेशन इस बजट से मिले हैं कि हमारी इकॉनमी जो आज दुनिया की टाइप 5 कंट्रीज में है, उसकी साइज बढ़कर 2027 तक मोर देन $5 ट्रिलियन जाएगी और 2030 आते आते मोर देन $7 ट्रिलियन तक पहुंचेगी।
India's Transport Minister Nitin Gadkari in turn says that the budget is aimed at strengthening the country's economy in line with Prime Minister Narendra Modi's resolve to make India the third largest economy in the world.
दुनिया में भारत को तीसरी अर्थव्यवस्था बनाने का जो संकल्प प्रधानमंत्री जी ने किया है, उसी के अनुसार वित्त मंत्री जी का ये बजट हिंदुस्तान की आर्थिक क्षेत्र को मजबूत करने वाला है, एक्सपोर्ट को बढ़ाने वाला है, उद्योग व्यवसाय की तरक्की करने वाला है और रोजगार नए क्रिएट करने वाला है। मुझे विश्वास है कि इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को अब सबसे ज़्यादा प्रायोरिटी मिली है। हमारा भी बजट काफ़ी बड़ा है और निश्चित रूप से आने वाले समय में हमारे देश का रेलवे का, हवाई जहाज, एयरपोर्ट्स, रोड और पावर, ये जो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के चारों क्षेत्र हैं, हम वर्ल्ड स्टैंडर्ड के बनेंगे, ऐसा मुझे विश्वास है।
Minister of State General V.K. Singh in turn called the budget development oriented.
It's a budget which is development oriented for the future, because we are all moving now towards a time when we want India to be developed by 2047. So it's a budget which builds on the strengths of today and gives direction for macroeconomics have been improved in the last 10 years. There has been a great amount of push on infrastructure. There has been a great amount of push on capex-oriented budgets in the last couple of years.
For his part, India's Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan called the budget a stepping stone to a developed India.
आने वाले दिनों में जब हम विकसित भारत की ओर बढ़ रहे हैं, ये बजट उसके लिए एक बहुत बड़ा स्टेपिंग स्टोन है। प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने जय अनुसंधान की बात कही थी, सिर्फ कहे नहीं, उसको क्रियान्वयन करने के लिए आज बजट में 1 लाख करोड़ रुपया की एक कॉर्पस फंड की अनाउंस किया गया।
Another minister, Kiren Rijiju, thanked Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman and Prime Minister Narendra Modi for the budget. He said the country has become confident in terms of its economy today.
इतना बढ़िया बजट जो एक दिशा देता है, अगले बार जब रेगुलर बजट पेश करेंगे, उस बीच का जो फासला है उसको पूरा करके साथ साथ पूरा 2047 तक विकसित भारत का नींव कैसे रखना है, इतना सुंदर से रखा, कोई सेक्टर छूटा नहीं है।
Jagat Prakash Nadda, the president of the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, termed the budget far-sighted, one that the foundation of a developed India.
यह बजट विकसित भारत के लक्ष्य की बुनियाद है। हम गरीबी हटाने का नारा नहीं देते, बल्कि गरीबी दूर करके दिखाते हैं। हम विकसित और विकास की केवल बात नहीं करते, बल्कि विकास को घर घर पहुंचाने में यकीन रखते हैं। अंतरिम बजट में मध्यम वर्ग के लिए आवास योजना लाए जाने का निर्णय एक क्रांतिकारी कदम है। अगले 5 साल में प्रधानमंत्री आवास योजना ग्रामीण के तहत लगभग 2 करोड़ घर बनाने का निर्णय।
Amitabh Kant, a former CEO of Niti Aayog and Apex Public Policy think tank of the Government of India, said that the budget is reflective of the confidence that the government enjoys among people.
I think the budget is very reflective of inclusive growth. It's reflective of the confidence of the government that will come in to do a long-term budget, because it believes in macroeconomic fundamentals. It believes in bringing in financial discipline. It believes in no populism. It believes in ensuring capex expenditure. It believes in putting the priorities of the country first and foremost.
Devendra Fadnavis, the Deputy Chief Minister of the Western Indian state of Maharashtra, said the budget speaks about measures for the poor and middle class.
अर्थमंत्री निर्मला सीतारमन जी ने जो अंतरिम बजट पेश किया है, विकसित भारत की संकल्पना विशद करने वाला इस प्रकार का ये बजट है। इस बजट में विशेष रूप से गरीबों मध्यम वर्गीयों के लिए कई योजनाएं उन्होंने रखी है, जिसमें 1 करोड़ सोलर रूफटॉप, जिसके माध्यम से 300 यूनिट तक की बिजली ये हमारे नागरिकों को मुफ्त मिलने वाली है। जो लोग झोपड़पट्टी में रहते हैं या चौल में रहते हैं, ऐसे लोगों को उनका घर खरीदने का या नया घर लेने का सपना पूरा हो, इसके लिए भी योजना लाई जा रही है।
India's Civil Aviation Minister Jyotiraditya Scindia called the budget a medium to transform India into a self-empowered nation. He highlighted the measures contained in the budget document to grow the country's economy.
The budget is a statement of the Prime Minister's personal resolve to transform Bharat into a Vishwaguru, to transform Bharat into an Atmanirbhar Bharat. Today, India has emerged on the world stage. We were the 10th largest economy, we are today the 5th largest economy. By 2027, we will be the world's 3rd largest economy. And that empowerment of the Prime Minister through his schemes, which looks at development not at the village level, but looks at development, as the Finance Minister said, at the individual level.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of DD India News Hour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. You can also check out our website ddindia.co.in. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. From all of us here in New Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.